to a book we don't read and preach from a whole lot ordinarily, and that's the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers. Numbers chapter 9. The book of Numbers chapter 9 is where I feel led to read from this morning. And we're going to begin with verse 1, and we're going to read down through verse 13. Numbers chapter 9. We're going to begin reading in verse 1, and we're going to read down through verse 13. We welcome you to the service this morning. We're thankful that you are here. We're thankful for this opportunity to once again meet. I know we have some of our body outside listening through the radio. As always, we're thankful that you have put forth the effort to come. I'm going to make some statements before I read, probably say, just talk for several minutes before I read this morning. And as we come to the last Sunday, this is the 52nd Sunday of 2020, that we know things are much different than they were the first Sunday of 2020. And I'm not going to go back through and try to explain all that. We've lived through it. You certainly know that I often thought, I say often, probably not the best word, there's times I had wondered about what it would be like to live through a pandemic. I know that teaching history, that's one of the things that we didn't deal with in a great way, but something we mentioned as we would come to the chapter, the unit on World War I, that while there was a world war going on, that there was a flu pandemic that swept through the world. And I went back and looked yesterday as I was studying, prepared to preach today, and if my memory serves me correctly, there were about 660,000 deaths in the United States due to that pandemic in 1917, 1918. We're sitting at right at about half that number right now for COVID. So you could just imagine that, and I'm not downplaying what we're going through now. I'm just saying that we're not the first ones to experience it. And I understand that even the mortality rate differed among different age groups, that COVID's been something that predominantly has been something that's caused death among those who are older. But I understand the pandemic of the Spanish flu hit three groups hard, and that was the very young, and then they said the 20 to 40-year-old age range was very, very highly affected, very deadly among those people then. And then the very old, it gave examples like a W. You looked at it on a graph. And so that those people certainly faced very hard times. Not only were they dealing with that, dealing with a world war. And the thing is that a lot of the treatments that we have today were unavailable to them at that time, the medical facilities and things of that nature. And I don't want to just give you a dialogue on that this morning. But I want to, first of all, I want to say some encouraging words to the church. I want to look back over the past year as we come to the end of the year. I want to look back on some things and try to encourage us, some things that have happened over the past year. And then I want to look ahead to the upcoming year. None of us know the future, and I don't claim to know the future, and I'm not going to tell you I know the future this morning. But I want to instruct us on some things I think will be beneficial to us moving forward into the upcoming year. First of all, I want us to look back. I'm going to make these statements, and we'll read here in Numbers chapter 9, that this is a pastor to his flock this morning. Very, very personal message, I guess, I want to try to preach this morning. That as your pastor, from the bottom of my heart, I want to tell you thank you for the way that you've dealt with this over the past year. We are truly blessed as a church to have come to this place and to have gone through it in the way that we went through it, that it has been, I know with God that all things are possible. Don't take this the wrong way, what I'm about to say, but it's really because of all the decisions that have had to be made over the past year that it's probably impossible for us to have been able to agree on everything that has been done. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We just all have different thoughts. We have different opinions. And I'll say this, that there's none of us that have agreed on everything that we've had to do over the past year, including myself. I've not always agreed with what we were doing. And what I mean by that is that there's times I thought that other things would have been better. We could have done things in a different way. and you've thought the same thing, and you're not going to hurt my feelings by shaking your head. I know that you've thought the same thing, because there's just been so many unknown factors, so many things that are new, and just so many times things change so fast, and you have to make the best decision possible at that time. And yet, even though that, no doubt that we've not agreed on everything, I'm so thankful that by the grace of God, and I'm not giving the glory to you, and I'm not giving the glory to me this morning, but by the grace of God, that we've been able to put our feelings and our preferences aside for the most part, for one reason, and that's for the edification of the body of Christ, for the cause of Christ. And I want to tell you how thankful I am for you, and how thankful I am even to pastor a group such as this, that you didn't allow those things to cause problems, because I know there's a lot of places where those things have caused problems over the past year. And I'm going to go a step further, and I want to say to the church that I appreciate you being willing to follow my guidance at times when things were changing so fast that we were unable to meet. There were times that things would change between Wednesday night and Sunday. There's times things would change between Sunday and Wednesday night. And even though I believe in church authority, I believe in the church deciding the things that the church does, there were times that decisions couldn't wait. And maybe I had to send a text out saying that this is what I feel like would be best for the church to do. And I'm thankful. I appreciate you, that you being willing to follow in that guidance. And did I always make the right decision? No. I'm not standing up here and saying I did. I look back and see things that, look at hindsight's 20/20, and there's things that we could have done different. There's times that I probably recommended maybe things that were overboard, going too far. There's times I probably recommended things that didn't go far enough. But I promise you this, I did what I thought was best at the time for the church. And I just appreciate you just jumping in there and working together. There's a verse of Scripture in Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 17. It says, "A brother is born for adversity." And church, I want to tell you something. I never would have thought this would have been the case. I guess now I've been with the church over 7 years. And, we've grown close to you. But I feel like I've grown closer to y'all over the past year than I have the first 6 years. And it's strange because we haven't been able to be together, have we? I hadn't been at the hospital with you like I ordinarily would be, or at the doctor, or in your homes, or things of that nature. And we know why. And yet, even though we've not been together, I feel like that the bond, and there's a bond between the people of God, and I feel like that bond has gotten tighter. And what a blessing. What a blessing. And so this morning, again, I want to tell you, thank you for allowing the Lord to take precedence in your life over this past year and not ourselves. It would have been very easy for us to bicker and argue, and I'm sure that there were times that you said, "What is he thinking? What is his problem?" And yet I'm thankful that when it came down to it, that you just continued to be faithful to the Lord. There's examples I could use of conversations that we've had. I'm not going to do that this morning. I just want to tell you how thankful that I am, and I want to remind you of this. It's not over. We can't let our guard down. I don't know how much longer we'll deal with this. I hope and pray that it's gone very quickly. I guess I got hopeful as I was going back and reading about the 1918 pandemic that the worst spike, from what I can tell, the worst spike was followed by it fell off very rapidly, and it was gone pretty quick. And I hope that's how it is with this. I hope it won't be long before that things will be over. But we need to continue to stay focused upon the Lord, and when this is all over with, I don't think it'll be long. When this is all over with, let us not forget that we still need one another. We're going to still need one another. Just like we've needed one another through this, we're going to need one another when this is over with. And we're all back in here together. We're going to need one another just as much as we've needed one another over the past year. And so I just want to tell you, I'm so thankful how that you have handled this, reacted to this, and I don't know that I've had the opportunity to tell you that. Looking back over the past year, that the Lord's been good to us. Let's read Numbers chapter 9. Let's look at the first 13 verses. And as we look back, I want to look forward to the remainder of the time that I have this morning. Numbers chapter 9, beginning of verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year, after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season. In the 14th day of this month, at even, you shall keep it in his appointed season. According to all the rites of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof, shall you keep it. And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, that they should keep the Passover. And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month at even, in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel. And there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, that they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and before Aaron on that day. And those men said unto him, We are defiled by the dead body of a man. Wherefore we kept back, that we may not offer an offering of the Lord in his appointed season among the children of Israel. That's a question. I should have read that as a question. Verse 8, And Moses said unto them, Stand still, and I will hear what the Lord will command concerning you. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, say, If any man of you or of your posterity shall be unclean by reason of a dead body, or be in a journey afar off, yet he shall keep the Passover unto the Lord. The 14th day of the second month at even they shall keep it, and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall leave none of it until the morning, nor break any bone of it. According to all the ordinances of the Passover, they shall keep it. But the man that is clean and is not in a journey, and forbeareth to keep the Passover, even the same shall be cut off from among his people, because he brought not the offering of the Lord in his appointed season. That man shall bear his sin. Now, you may wonder, why in the world read that passage this morning? And yet as I've pondered throughout the week on what the message would be that the Lord would have for me to preach, my mind went to these verses of Scripture. And I think one time, years ago, I don't think it was here, that I tried to preach out of these verses of Scripture in a totally different line of thought, maybe starting a revival somewhere. But it's a very interesting situation that we have here. And I'm not going to just take a lot of time to look at every detail of every verse that we read. But you find here that as they go out into the wilderness, they've left out of Egypt. And of course, that as they left out of Egypt, the Lord told them that this is going to be the beginning of months, that this is the first month, and on the 14th day of the month that you're going to keep the Passover. And that's what they kept. And that's why the lambs were killed, and the blood was placed on the doorpost and on the lintel as they would go out of Egypt, as Pharaoh would finally say, Let them go, as the Lord would pass through the land and would slay the firstborn. But a year's passed since then, and they're out in the wilderness. And it says here that the Lord reminds them that it's time to keep the Passover. It's time to keep the Passover. It's the beginning of months. And he reminded them, he said in verse 2, let them keep it. And then he told them, he reminded them the 14th day of this month that you're going to do all those things that I commanded you to do. And that he told Moses, you go remind the people. Don't let them forget. But you remind them that this is the first time that they have done this after they left out of Egypt. And you remind them what they ought to do. And so it says that they did it. And verse 5, they kept the Passover. But I want to deal with what we find in verses 6 through 13. That it says in verse 6, it introduces us to some men. I don't know how many there were, but it said there were certain men. And their situation was a unique situation. That it said that they had been defiled by the body of a dead man. And because of that they were rendered ceremonially unclean. Now, you can go back to the book of Exodus, and as God gave the law, that He was very specific on things that would defile a person, and there were many things that could defile an individual. And we know that the defilement is not the outward defilement. That's what the Pharisees got hung up on in the New Testament. But the Lord told them it's the condition of your heart. And that's what the Lord was getting across in these laws that He gave, that I'm a holy God and I'm a pure God. And in order to approach me, that you got to approach me pure and you got to approach me holy. And that's what all pointed to the Lamb of God. That's what pointed to Jesus. But that these men had been defiled by the body of a dead man. I don't know how they were defiled by the body of a dead man. That I don't know if they had a loved one that had died and they were responsible for burying the body. I don't know if they had come up on somebody maybe that was dead, or maybe somebody was at the point of death and they had tried to help them and they died. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that because that they had come in contact with the body of a dead man, that they were unclean and they were unfit to keep the Passover of that year. And I want you to notice, let's reread verse 7. So these men come before Moses, and they said, we're defiled by the dead body of a man. There was no mistaking to them that we're not fit to participate. We cannot participate. We're defiled by the dead body of a man. But then they ask a question. Wherefore are we kept back? Why are we kept back? That we may not offer an offering unto the Lord in His appointed season among the children of Israel. In essence, what they're saying is, look, we're unable to participate, but we sure want to participate. We want to keep the Passover. We want to be obedient to God. In essence, Brother Rodney, what they're going to ask is there any way? Or are we just left out? Moses said, I don't know. I've never thought about that. That's not what the Scripture says, but that's what Moses told them. You go to verse 8, and Moses said unto them, stand still, and I will hear what the Lord will command concerning you. Basically, Moses says, let me talk to God about it. I don't know. You know, what does the Bible say about if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God? Moses lacked wisdom in this situation, so he asked of God. When you lack wisdom about a situation, when you're unsure of what to do, you need to ask God. And then James said you need to ask believing. But Moses asked God, and the answer to God, the answer of God to Moses was simply this. I'm going to put it in my own words. He says, Moses, you tell those men that I'm going to give them an opportunity to keep the Passover. They can do it on the second month, on the 14th day of the month. Everything's going to be the same. Instead of doing it the first month, they'll just do it the second month. And he told them here in verse 10, he said, if any man of you or of your posterity shall be unclean by reason of a dead body, or be in a journey afar off, yet he shall keep the Passover unto the Lord. And then he told him again, this would be the second month instead of the first month. And he said, you do it just as you would have done it before. But then there's a warning given in verse 13. And I want to preach on basically this advice that God gave Moses and then this warning that God gave Moses. Verse 13, God says, but the man that is clean and is not in a journey and forbeareth. The word forbeareth there means that he just doesn't do what he's supposed to. He ceases to be obedient. And he forbeareth to keep the Passover. Even the same shall be cut off from among his people, because he brought not the offering of the Lord in his appointed season. That man shall bear his sin. The word cut off here, it can mean a couple of things, but one of the meanings can be that he would actually be killed. His life would be taken. It would be a capital offense for him to be in a position where he could keep the Passover and just failed to do it. I'm going to title the message, maybe an odd title this morning. It's a little bit of a lengthy title. I'm going to read it a couple of times, let you process it. And that is this: the great danger in allowing the extraordinary to become ordinary. That's what I want to preach about this morning. The great danger in allowing the extraordinary to become ordinary. The great danger in allowing the extraordinary to become ordinary. You ever heard the saying that extraordinary times call for, what's the remainder of that? Extraordinary measures. Y'all have heard it because you finished it. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. In other words, that there's things that we do, there's things that we're willing to do, there's things that we're willing to accept in extraordinary times that we would not ordinarily accept or be willing to do. And we all would agree that this, and again, I'm not going to spend all our time this morning on the past. I want to look forward. That's what I want to do this morning, just giving us a warning, looking forward. But we would all agree that 2020 has been extraordinary. And for you younger ones, or older ones, extraordinary doesn't always mean good. A lot of times we use it in a positive sense. Well, that was extraordinary. Extraordinary just means unusual, not ordinary. And so we have been through an extraordinary year. And because of that we've been willing to do some extraordinary things, haven't we? We have been willing to accept some limitations on some of our civil liberties for the good of society. I just put it that way. And I say we've been blessed. I think it's a blessing that here, at least in this part of the country, that we've not had as extraordinary measures placed upon us as many people in this other parts of this country and around the world have. I think back in history to the Great Depression. There were some extraordinary things that were done during the Great Depression, weren't there? Things that we had never done before. In fact, one of the things that we had never done before, some of you young people, you hadn't studied about this, there's never really a time in this country where the federal government had offered direct relief to people. It was always, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Get out, hard work, make it happen. Do whatever you've got to do to survive. But during the Great Depression, the federal government began offering direct assistance to the American people. And these were extraordinary measures. And I'm not going to cast light this morning on whether they were right or whether they were wrong. We probably all have our opinions on that. But let me ask you this. Let me get your attention for a minute. Let me ask you this. Does God understand extraordinary situations? I think most of you agree with me. I would say yes. Did God understand the condition of these men? These were men that with all their heart wanted to participate. They wanted to keep the Passover as had been commanded of them by God. There was absolutely no desire within them whatsoever to skip out on it, to use this as an excuse not to do it, because if it would have, they would have never come to Moses and asked him, well, how come we can't participate? I think that this was unintentional. They had no desire to be ceremonially, that's hard for me to say, ceremonially unclean at this point where they could not participate in the Passover. But it just happened. And there's times that men can't understand extraordinary situations, but God understood it. He totally understood the situation that they were in. And so what did God do? God said, well, I'll make an allowance right here. He said, you just keep it the second month instead of the first month. But how did God finish up in verse 13? Let's reread verse 13 again. But the man that is clean and is not in a journey and forbeareth to keep the Passover, even the same soul shall be cut off from among his people. Because he brought not the offering of the Lord in his appointed season, that man shall bear his sin. You know what God told, in essence, what God told them at the end of this? He said, you best not make a habit of this. Y'all agree with that? That's a pretty good summary of what God said. Don't get used to this. Don't get used to saying, well, I'm unable to do this. And so that I want an exception. I want another way to be able to do it. He said, if you're not off on a journey afar off, if you're not unclean, he said, I expect you to do it on time. He said, I'll make the exception. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. I'll make the exception, but he said, don't think that you can use this as an excuse. Listen, you know what God was telling them? Don't let the extraordinary become ordinary with you. Don't let the extraordinary become ordinary. Next year, you're expected to keep it at the right time because the situation will be different. I jotted down some things. I'm just going to read this list off to you. I want to remind you of things that we have done as a church this year that have been extraordinary. And I'm sure I've missed some, but I tried to go back and think about how this year's been extraordinary. Do y'all remember I can't remember how many weeks it was when Sunday night service was on YouTube? When I filmed it in my kitchen, sitting at my table and posted it on YouTube. Y'all remember the conference calls on Wednesday night? Appreciate Brother Tommy. Brother Tommy, I had to apologize. I kind of dismissed that when you first mentioned it to me. But it turned out to be a blessing. I appreciate you mentioning it to me. It was a way for us during a time when we were unable to communicate that we could at least hear one another's voice. And it was good while it lasted. I don't know how Brother Matt might could tell us. We missed just about a whole quarter of Sunday school when we were meeting outside, and then times when we came back in and we were just having a short song service and preaching. When's the last time the choir was up here? March? Probably so. I know our young people have sat up here a few times doing things, but I think it was about March. We postponed the Lord's Supper. Did y'all realize that? We're supposed to have it Saturday night before revival. I think that's a very, very, very important service. Yet we postponed it. We didn't have morning revival services. In fact, we had revival outside, didn't we? And the Lord blessed. When's the last time we had a dinner on the ground? Spring revival? February? We hadn't had meals together. Youth sing. We hadn't been out to the nursing home. I don't know what month we went. May have been last December. I don't know. We hadn't had our fifth Sunday sings. We hadn't been together as a body in months. As far as the whole body, we've been split, some inside and some outside. Why have we done this? We've done it because we've been in extraordinary times, and they call for extraordinary measures. And I'm going to ask you this morning. You believe the Lord's okay with that right now? You believe the Lord understands why we've done what we've done? I'm not God. No doubt that if He were to come in and just give us a report, He would say, Brother Brent, there's things you should have done different. But on the other hand, I believe He would say, I also understand that these are extraordinary times. God told these men, your situation is extraordinary. And I'm going to allow you to do it different this year. Did he not? What he told him. I'm going to allow you to do it different this year. You know what my greatest concern, one of my greatest concerns about all this has been? That is the fear of the extraordinary becoming ordinary with us. That is probably my greatest concern through all of this. That what we've had to do in the extraordinary times, that we'll get used to it. And when the extraordinary times are over, that we won't go back to the ordinary things as we ought to. Let me ask you this. When this is over, what's your mindset going to be about public worship? Will it be different than it was a year ago? Will it be okay to attend church virtually? I'm going to make a statement, and I know probably some agree, some disagree. I am opposed to virtual church. And you may have to see things different. That's okay. I'm opposed to it. I know it serves a purpose of maybe some hearing that wouldn't ordinarily hear. But I think it gives great opportunity for the people of God to become lazy in their worship. So will it be okay when all this is over with? Let me say this. We've got an FM transmitter, and I'm for it 100%. I believe that's exactly what we need to have right now. I am so thankful that those that are outside listening right now, that are in our body, are able to come. And that's why I try every service to thank them for coming. They are making the sacrifice more than we're making, because it's not comfortable out there. I appreciate it so much them coming. When this is over with, that thing needs to be put in a closet somewhere. We can use it for special occasions. But when times are no longer extraordinary, we need to go back to the ordinary. We've had to cancel church at times this year. I hate doing that. And Brother Clay, one reason I hate doing it is because it makes it easier to do it the next time. You know, is our mindset going to be, well, I just really don't feel the best tonight, and I don't feel like getting ready, and so, let me just, again, going back to the FM transmitter, I'll just stay out in the parking lot. That's not the mindset we need to have. It's okay right now if there's a reason why you can't come in. And I understand these that are compromised, these that they're older. I'm glad they're out there, because this thing's rampant right now. But don't let the extraordinary become ordinary. You know what the best way to prevent that is? Resist doing it now. Resist doing it now. Don't let your mindset change now. Let me remind you of a couple of things. I'm going to close. In the book of 1 Samuel, I'm not going to turn back and read it, but in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 21, David was on the run from Saul, and he and his men were hungry. And where did they go to? They went to the tabernacle. And that the Lord had commanded the priest that served at the tabernacle that every Sabbath day that there would be 12 new loaves of bread that would be placed on the table of showbread. These were holy, this was holy bread. And it was to symbolize Christ as the bread of life for the 12 tribes of Israel. But these loaves of bread that were placed upon the table of showbread in the tabernacle, they were not to be used for a common purpose. When they were changed once a week, who was to eat that bread? Anybody remember? The priests were to eat that bread. David and his men were hungry. They were faint. And they went into the tabernacle. And what did they eat? They ate that bread that was not lawful for them to eat. Did God kill them? No. You know why? Because it was an extraordinary situation. And God allowed them in that situation to do that which was not lawful to do. Now, what if David would have said, that was pretty good bread? And the next Sabbath he went back and said, give me some of that showbread. I believe the Lord would have struck him dead. Because it was no longer extraordinary. Jesus spoke of this in the New Testament, the book of Luke chapter 14. He was making a point about the Sabbath day. He asked the Pharisees a question. He said, how many of you, if you have an ox or an ass, and he falleth into the ditch on the Sabbath day, that you won't pull him out? Why would you get the ox or the ass out of the ditch on the Sabbath day? Because the ditch had water in it, or the pit. It had water in it, and he could drown. You get him out. You ever heard the old saying, make sure you don't throw your own ox into the ditch? What Jesus was saying is that this was an extraordinary, this was a special situation, and that he allowed those things because he said, man was not made for the Sabbath was made for man. It's the day of rest. But in essence, Jesus said, make sure you don't throw him in there. Make sure you don't make the extraordinary ordinary. This morning, there's a great danger in that. And I know it's difficult, that through all this, that our mindset is not changed by the things that we see and the things we experience. But I'm hopeful that the upcoming year, this pandemic is going to be over. And when it does, all these things that we've done, because times were extraordinary, we need to make sure we get back to the ordinary. This morning, if you're here and you're lost, 2020 is about over. 2021 is about to begin. One of these years, the Lord's going to come back. He may come back before 2021 gets here. I don't know. He may come back in 2020. One of these years that you're going to die, and they'll take a slab of granite or marble, and that they'll etch a date. Your year of death. It might be 2020, it might be 21, it might be 10 years from now, it might be 50 years from now. I don't know. When do you plan on trusting the Lord? When do you plan on being born again? Well, I plan to do it in 2020. Well, 2020 is about up. The Bible talks about an accepted time. And that's the time when the Lord's calling and He's bidding. Oh, sinner, I beg and plead with you, don't put it off. Get your business fixed. Trust Jesus while you have the time. Let's have a song. If you have something on your heart this morning, you feel free to come. Anyway, the church is known to receive members. You come while we sing.